My name is Maya Sinclair. I'm 33 years old. 9 weeks ago, I gave my own father my left kidney and saved his life. On December 7th, at his big recovery dinner, my mother stood up with a huge smile, raised her glass, and said, "To Vanessa, my incredible daughter, the one who saved your father's life with her fundraiser." 24 relatives exploded into cheers and applause. Not a single person looked at me. I sat there with a fresh 6-inch scar burning on my side. 9 weeks of unpaid medical bills, an empty bank account, and a body that will never be the same, while my own mother erased the kidney I donated like it never happened. Then, my father suddenly grabbed my wrist under the table, eyes filled with shame, and slid a napkin toward me. What I read on that napkin changed everything. And when my mother and sister finally found out the truth weeks later, our entire family didn't just break, it exploded. If you're watching this right now, please hit subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because I read every single one. But first, let me take you back 33 years to the beginning of being invisible in my own family. I work at Horizon Education Fund, a small nonprofit in Atlanta that helps first-generation college students navigate financial aid. My salary is $37,200 a year. I live in a studio apartment 25 minutes from my parents' house. My mother invites me over maybe 4 times a year. My sister Vanessa is 38. She's the VP of Operations at Sinclair Medical Devices, the business my father founded in 1997. She makes $190,000 a year. She has a husband, 2 kids, a house in the suburbs, and my mother's undivided attention. When Vanessa joined the company in 2014, my mother said, "Finally, someone who understands what legacy means." Meanwhile, I had just finished my master's degree in public health administration. No one asked if I wanted to interview. I stopped going to family events in 2023. The annual Christmas dinners where I sat at the kids' table even though I was 31. The birthday parties where my mother forgot to get me a card. The company milestones where I wasn't invited because it was really just for employees and board members. But there's something most people don't know. Something that happened 4 years before any of this. In 2021, my father had his first kidney health scare, a warning from his doctor that his kidney function was declining. I was the one who went to the hospital that time too. I sat in the waiting room for 6 hours, and when the doctor mentioned that a family member could potentially be tested as a future donor if things got worse, I spoke up immediately. I said I wanted to be tested. My mother looked at the doctor and said, "That won't be necessary. Maya has a history of not following through on commitments. We'll find another way." The doctor looked at me. I looked at my mother. My father said nothing. I drove home alone. That moment sat inside me like a stone for 4 years. So when his kidneys finally failed completely on August 3rd, 2025, and my cousin Julia texted me that my father had collapsed at the company's 28th anniversary gala, I already knew what I was going to do before I even changed out of my pajamas. I arrived at Piedmont Hospital at 10:44 p.m. My mother and Vanessa were in the ER waiting area, heads close together, whispering. When my mother looked up and saw me, her face didn't show relief. It showed annoyance. I walked over and asked how he was. She said they were running tests and that it was his kidneys. Her tone was flat. Vanessa barely looked up from her phone. I sat 3 chairs away from them. No one spoke to me. 45 minutes later, a doctor came out and spoke directly to my mother. I strained to hear. Stage 4 kidney failure. He needs a transplant within 6 to 8 weeks, or he'll be on dialysis for the rest of his life. Living donor is ideal if we can find a match. My mother glanced at Vanessa. "We'll do whatever it takes." I wasn't included in we. At midnight, the doctor let us see him briefly. My mother and Vanessa went in together. I waited. When they came out, my mother said I could go in if I wanted, but not to tire him out. I pushed open the door. My father was hooked to monitors, IV lines, oxygen. His skin looked gray. When he saw me, tears filled his eyes. He said he thought I'd come. I told him, of course I came. He said my mother had told him I was probably busy, that I didn't really stay involved with family stuff anymore. I understood then. My mother had been telling him that I was the one who pulled away. I took his hand and told him I was getting tested tomorrow. He said I didn't have to. I said I wanted to. As I left, I passed my mother and Vanessa in the hallway. I heard my mother whisper, "She'll get tested and back out." You know how she is. I kept walking. My hands were shaking. The next morning, I called the transplant coordinator at Piedmont Hospital. My name is Maya Sinclair. My father, Richard Sinclair, was admitted last night with kidney failure. I want to get tested as a living donor. They asked me to come in at 2 p.m. I said I'd be there. I didn't tell my mother or Vanessa. A week later, on August 10th, I got the call. Ms. Sinclair, you're a compatible match. Blood type O positive, tissue compatibility 97%, excellent kidney function. You're an ideal donor. I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage and cried. Relief and dread mixed together. I called my father directly. I told him I was a match and that I wanted to donate. His voice broke. He said I didn't have to. I told him I knew that and that I wanted to anyway. There was a long silence. Then he said my mother was going to have opinions. I told him to let her. 2 days later, my mother called a family meeting. My father, my mother, Vanessa, and me. My mother opened with, "We need to discuss Richard's transplant options." I said I was a compatible donor, and I was willing to donate. Silence. My mother stared at me. She said I had tested without telling them. I said I wanted to be sure first. Vanessa said she was going to test that week. A lie. She hadn't scheduled anything. My mother turned to my father and asked what he thought. He said quietly that if I was willing and a match. He didn't want to wait for a cadaver donor. The list was 2 years long. My mother's jaw tightened. She said they could find another living donor, a friend, a colleague, someone who wasn't his daughter. I looked at her and asked why, since I was a perfect match and willing. My mother looked me straight in the eye and said the problem was that I had never finished anything difficult in my life. I drove home in silence. But my father called me that night. He said, if I was sure, then let's do it. He trusted me. 3 days later, on August 13th, Vanessa called me. It was rare. She said since I was donating, she wanted to do something to help. She said she was organizing a fundraiser, kidney disease awareness, to raise money for research and offset Dad's medical costs. I felt uneasy, but said that was nice of her. She said she was thinking a charity gala with company sponsors and local news coverage. I asked if the fundraiser would mention that I was donating. She said, of course, it was all about the family coming together. But Vanessa's tone was already shaping the narrative toward herself. A week later, I Googled Vanessa's name and fundraiser. I found the preliminary event listing, Vanessa Sinclair Moore Kidney Health Initiative, supporting the Sinclair family. My name appeared nowhere in the description. On August 26th, I had my final pre-op psychological evaluation with Dr. Lisa Howe, the hospital social worker. She asked standard questions about my support system, my motivations, my understanding of the risks. Then, she asked if I had felt any pressure from my family to donate. I paused and said no, that this was my choice. She asked if I felt seen by my family, appreciated for this decision. I paused too long. Dr. Howe made a note. What I didn't know then was that 2 days later, my mother came to Dr. Howe's office. My mother told her I wasn't stable enough for this, that I had emotional issues and was doing it for attention, and that she was genuinely worried about me. Dr. Howe documented every word. September 15th, 2025, 5:30 a.m. I arrived at the hospital in the dark. My mother and Vanessa were already in the pre-op waiting area. I saw Vanessa on her phone. I heard her say, "Yes, the surgery is today. I'll post updates after the fundraiser." She was already planning how to frame the story. At 6:15 a.m., I was in a pre-op gown with an IV in my arm. My father was wheeled past my bay on his way to his operating room. We made eye contact. He mouthed, "Thank you." My mother and Vanessa stopped by my bay for 30 seconds. My mother said good luck. Vanessa said I was so brave. Then they left. The anesthesiologist told me to count backward from 10. I got to 7. I woke up at 2:17 p.m. with searing pain in my left side. I tried to call for a nurse, but my throat was too dry from the breathing tube. I realized I was alone in the recovery bay. For 6 hours, nurses checked my vitals every hour. At 4 p.m., a nurse mentioned my father had come through surgery and was in ICU recovery with my family. I asked if someone could come be with me. She said they were focused on my dad. At 8 p.m., a different nurse named Beth came in. She looked at me for a long moment and asked if I had someone she could call, that I shouldn't be alone after major surgery. I said my family was here. They were just with my dad. Beth's face changed. She told me my mother and sister had been in my dad's ICU room since 3 p.m. and that they knew I was awake. I told her it was okay. He needed them more. Beth told me that's not how this works. At 9:30 p.m., my mother finally appeared at the foot of my bed. She said they were moving me to a room and that Kenneth was stable. She said she'd check on me tomorrow. She left. No one had said thank you. At 2:50 am on September 16th, my door opened quietly. My father was in a wheelchair pushed by a night nurse. He had an oxygen tank. He looked weak, but he was there. He whispered that he told them he needed to see me. The nurse said 5 minutes. He was not supposed to be out of ICU. My father wheeled his chair close to my bed. He took my hand. He was crying. He said, "I see you, Maya. I've always seen you. And I'm going to make this right." I told him it was okay. He said it was not okay, and it had never been okay. He said tomorrow morning some people were coming to see him, a social worker and a lawyer, and that he was taking care of something. I was too medicated to understand. I fell asleep. What I didn't know was that at 11:30 a.m. that same morning, September 16th, 2025, my father signed a durable power of attorney for healthcare in his ICU room. Dr. Lisa Howe was there. Daniel Grant, an estate attorney, was there. Dr. Priya Kapoor, his attending physician, was there as a witness. My father, still weak but completely lucid, changed his medical proxy from my mother to me. It was witnessed, notarized, and time-stamped. I didn't know. 2 days later, on September 18th, he signed a beneficiary change form for his Northwestern Life policy, number NL 9912304, worth $2.7 million. The beneficiary had been my mother for 20 years. He changed it to me. On September 20th, he signed a restricted stock transfer agreement. My father owned 71% of the company he'd founded. He transferred 52% of voting shares to me. On September 25th, that transfer was filed with the Georgia Secretary of State. I knew none of this. I was home alone trying to recover. The first 2 weeks were bed rest. I couldn't lift more than 5 pounds. I couldn't drive. I slept 16 hours a day. No one offered to help. My mother called once and asked how I was managing. She mentioned that Richard's kidney function was 95% perfect before hanging up. On day 10, Vanessa texted to ask how recovery was going and said the fundraiser planning was going great. Week 2, my boss called and said we needed to talk about my leave because they didn't have paid medical leave for this long. She said she could hold my position through 8 weeks. I realized I could lose my job. Week 4, I developed a fever of 101 degrees. I went to the ER. Another $1,300 after insurance. I started calculating my costs. 9 weeks of unpaid leave, $6,500 in lost wages. My insurance deductible, $2,500. Non-covered pre-op tests, $890. The ER visit, $1,300. Prescriptions, $340. Total out-of-pocket, $11,530. My savings account had $3,100 before all this. I was now in overdraft. Meanwhile, Vanessa's fundraiser was everywhere. Local news, company LinkedIn posts, Instagram stories. The event was scheduled for October 18th at Magnolia Country Club. I wasn't invited. One article mentioned supporting the Sinclair family's medical journey. My name was not mentioned once. Week 6, I finally opened a letter my father had sent me. It contained a check for $2,000. The note said, "For your medical expenses." I know it's not enough. "I'm sorry I can't do more right now without raising questions." I stared at the phrase, "without raising questions." What did that mean? I deposited the check. It covered 17% of my debt. Week 7, Week 8. I'd been avoiding social media during recovery. But in early November, a coworker sent me a link. It was Vanessa's Instagram. The fundraiser had happened on October 18th. 160 guests, silent auction, speeches. Vanessa's post showed her holding an oversized check. My mother, in an evening gown beside her. My father in a wheelchair, smiling weakly. The caption read, "Overwhelmed with gratitude." Together, we raised $91,000 for kidney disease research. My father's journey inspired this, and I'm honored to lead this initiative. Family is everything. There were 2,400 likes. The top comment, "You're amazing, Vanessa. What an incredible daughter." I scrolled through 25 photos from the event. I appeared in one, far in the background, blurry, wearing the green cardigan I'd bought during recovery because nothing else fit. I searched for Sinclair Medical Devices PR 2025. I found a press release dated October 20th. SMD demonstrates corporate social responsibility with $45,500 matching donation to kidney health. VP Vanessa Sinclair Moore spearheaded initiative. I searched Vanessa's LinkedIn. She'd updated her profile. New headline, VP of Operations and Healthcare Advocate Nonprofit Fundraising Leader. I found an industry publication from October 24th, quoting her, "In times of family crisis, true leaders emerge." I knew I had to step up and transform our personal challenge into an opportunity for community impact. I read that sentence 5 times. My father was 66. He'd planned to retire at 67. Succession at the company had been unclear for years. This fundraiser wasn't about my father's medical costs. It was Vanessa's CEO audition. On November 15th, 2025, 9 weeks after my surgery, Dr. Kapoor cleared me for normal activity with permanent restrictions, no contact sports, kidney monitoring every 6 months for life. I can never donate an organ again. That same day, I received a text from my mother. Family dinner Sunday, December 7th, post-Thanksgiving, to celebrate Richard's recovery. 6 p.m., Magnolia Hall, private room, 24 guests, cocktail attire. Be there. No please. No thank you for donating. Just be there. I stared at the message for 10 minutes, then typed, "I'll be there." I didn't know that dinner would change everything. On December 4th, I went shopping for a dress. I lost weight during recovery. Nothing fit. I bought a forest green dress for $94. It stretched my budget. The dress showed my scar when I moved. 2 inches of pink raised tissue above the neckline. I considered returning it. Then, I decided, let them see what this cost. On December 6th, the night before the dinner, I couldn't sleep. At 10:17 p.m., I called my father. I asked if my mother was going to mention the donation at dinner. There was a long silence. He said he couldn't control what my mother said, but that he could control what happened after. And he asked me to trust him and come tomorrow. His voice was shaking. After we hung up, I sat in the dark and looked at my forest green dress hanging on the closet door. 24 people. A celebration. A toast. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time they'd see me. December 7th, 2025, 6:08 p.m. I arrived at Magnolia Hall. The private dining room was called the Ivory Room. Long table set for 26. 2 people didn't show. There were name cards at each place setting. I found mine. Position 20 out of 24. I was seated at the far end of the table, nearly out of sight. At the head of the table sat my father. To his right, my mother. Then Vanessa. Then Vanessa's husband, Marcus. I was at the far end between my cousin Thomas and my cousin Julia. Julia whispered, "Why are you sitting down here?" I said I didn't know, that Mom did the seating chart. She said, of course she did. From 6:15 to 6:45, there was a cocktail hour. I stood near the table holding a glass of water. I was still on pain medication and couldn't drink alcohol. Vanessa was near my father's chair showing people photos from the fundraiser on her phone. My mother was hugging relatives, working the room. No one approached me except Julia, who whispered that we needed to talk after this, and Diane Foster, my father's assistant of 30 years, who made eye contact with me from across the room and mouthed, "I'm sorry," and Vanessa's 8-year-old daughter Sophie, who walked up to me and said, "Aunt Maya, why do you have that scar?" I told her I had surgery. She asked if it hurt. I said yes. She said her mommy told her she should cover scars at fancy dinners. I forced a smile and told her sometimes scars are important to show. Vanessa overheard. Her face flashed something, guilt, maybe, for half a second, then smoothed over. She pulled Sophie away. At 6:42 p.m., my mother tapped a spoon against her glass and asked everyone to take their seats. I walked to position 20. When I bent to sit, I felt a sharp pain in my left side. Still healing. I winced. Julia noticed and asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. The table filled. My father was assisted to the head of the table. He was stronger now, but still used a walker for short distances. He made eye contact with me down the table. His eyes looked sad and determined. I nodded at him. My mother sat and smoothed her napkin. She looked satisfied. Vanessa glanced at me once, then looked away. Appetizer course was served. I couldn't eat. My stomach was tight. My mother stood and tapped her glass. She said that before they ordered entrees, she wanted to say a few words about why they were all here that night. She said that 3 months ago, they had almost lost Richard. Stage 4 kidney failure. The doctors said without a transplant, he'd be on dialysis for the rest of his life. She said it was the scariest moment of their family's life. She paused, let it breathe. But she said that in that darkness, one person stepped up. One person showed extraordinary leadership, compassion, and strength. My heart started pounding. I knew where this was going. She said that person organized a fundraiser that brought their entire community together, that she raised $91,000 for kidney disease research, that she coordinated with teams and held the family together when she, my mother, was falling apart. I looked at my father. He was staring at his plate. His jaw was clenched. Vanessa's face, I couldn't tell if she was surprised or if she'd rehearsed this. My mother raised her glass. She said, "Please join her in raising your glasses." She turned toward Vanessa and smiled. "To Vanessa, my incredible daughter, the one who saved your father's life. My father's sister, Margaret, tried to speak Sandra. Wait, I thought, but my mother talked right over her." 24 glasses rose to Vanessa. The sound of glass on glass moved around the table like a wave. My glass stayed on the table. I couldn't move. Vanessa stood. She dabbed at her eyes. The tears looked real. "Thank you, Mom," she said, her voice breaking. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but Dad is worth it. Family is everything." Applause. Vanessa hugged my mother. Marcus, her husband, stood and clapped. He didn't know the full truth yet. Sophie and their son Liam clapped because that's what kids do. My father's hand stayed flat on the table. He wasn't clapping. My cousin next to me said, "Your sister is amazing. You must be so proud." I couldn't speak. I just nodded. My vision was blurring. I stood up. My chair scraped back. Several people looked, and then my father's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. His grip was strong despite his weakness. I stopped. The entire table was watching. My father's eyes locked on mine. He was crying. Without speaking, he slid a folded napkin across the table toward me with his other hand. He whispered, only I could hear, "Read it. Please, don't leave yet." I picked up the napkin. My mother said, "Maya, are you all right?" I looked at her. My voice came out cold and controlled. "I'm fine, Mom. Just processing how generous Vanessa is." I sat back down. I unfolded the napkin in my lap below the table, out of sight. I read it. The handwriting was my father's, shaky but clear. It said, "I changed the medical proxy to you, September 16th. Life insurance, $2.7 million. Your sole beneficiary. Filed September 18th. The business, 52% voting shares, transferred to you, executed September 20th, filed with state September 25th. They don't know yet. Attorney Grant has everything. I'm sorry I waited so long. I see you now." "Dad," I read it. Once, twice, 3 times. I looked up at my father. He nodded. Barely, I folded the napkin. I put it in my purse. I took a deep breath. Dinner service began. I ate mechanically. Conversation flowed around me. Relatives congratulated Vanessa, asked about the fundraiser, about her leadership. I said nothing. But here is the twist no one in that room expected, and I hadn't planned it either. Marcus, Vanessa's husband, quietly excused himself from the table around 8:15 p.m. I assumed he was going to the restroom. He wasn't. At 8:32 p.m., Marcus walked back in from the hallway. He had his phone in his hand. He stood at the entrance to the room. He didn't sit down. He looked at Vanessa. And then he looked at my mother. And in a voice that was calm but carried across the entire table, he said, "I owe everyone here an apology. When I stood and clapped tonight, I was clapping for the wrong person. I just spent 15 minutes on the phone with a colleague at Piedmont Hospital who is a transplant coordinator. I wanted to understand what Richard's recovery really involved. She told me that the living donor for Richard Sinclair was not listed as Vanessa. It was listed as Maya." The room went completely silent. Marcus's voice didn't waver. "My wife's name is on a fundraiser. My wife's name is in the news articles. My wife just accepted a toast for saving her father's life. But Maya is the one with the scar. Maya is the one who gave her kidney. And until 30 seconds ago, I didn't know that, because my own wife and my mother-in-law let me believe something that wasn't true." He looked directly at Vanessa. "I'm not angry. I'm heartbroken." He sat down. The silence lasted 4 full seconds. Then the room erupted. Vanessa's face collapsed. My mother turned white. My father's eyes closed. Relatives began turning to each other in confusion. Julia said out loud, "Wait, Maya donated the kidney?" I sat very still. I didn't speak. My father reached down the length of the table and held up one hand and said quietly, "Yes. Maya donated her kidney to me on September 15th. She tested in late July. She was a 97% match. She spent 9 weeks recovering alone, with no help, while the rest of us were elsewhere. What happened tonight at this table is something I am ashamed of. And I want every single person in this room to know that." My mother said, "Kenneth," he said. "Richard. And no, Sandra. Not tonight." I picked up my purse. I stood. And I walked out without looking back. In the parking lot, I sat in my car under the dome light and pulled out the napkin. My hands were shaking. He changed everything. The day after my surgery, September 16th, while I was alone in recovery, he was signing a medical proxy. September 18th, the life insurance. September 20th, the shares. While they were planning Vanessa's publicity stunt, he was transferring power to me. 52% voting shares. Majority control. $2.7 million. My phone rang. My father. "Did you read it?" "Yes, and why did you wait so long to tell me?" His voice was quiet. "I needed you to see what they would do at dinner. I needed you to witness it so you'd know you're not crazy." So you'd know this wasn't in your head. They erased you on purpose. Use the power, Maya. Fix what I broke or burn it all down. Your choice. I'll support you either way. I drove home. At 10:15 p.m., I checked my missed calls. Daniel Grant, the attorney my father had mentioned, had left a voicemail. Ms. Sinclair, Daniel Grant returning your call. Your father said you'd reach out after the family dinner. I can see you Monday, November 25th at 9 a.m. Everything your father executed is ironclad. Witnesses, notarization, proper filing. I'll walk you through it all. See you Monday. I played it 3 times. Ironclad. Monday, November 25th, 8:55 a.m. Grant and Associates, 12th floor, downtown Atlanta. Daniel Grant was 60. Gray hair, kind eyes, but sharp. He said my father spoke very highly of me. I said he'd never said that to me directly. Grant smiled slightly and said my father had mentioned that too. He said he owed me 34 years of words he didn't say and that he was trying to make up for it now. He opened the first folder. Durable Power of Attorney for Healthcare, signed September 16th, 2025 at 11:30 a.m., one day after my surgery. Witnessed by Dr. Priya Kapoor and Dr. Lisa Howe, notarized by the hospital notary. This replaced the previous power of attorney, which had named my mother. I now had full authority to make medical decisions for my father if he were incapacitated. Grant said my father told him, and I quote, "If I have another health crisis, I don't trust Sandra to choose what's best for me. She'll choose what's best for her image. Maya will choose what I would want." He opened the second folder. Northwestern Life Policy Number NL 9912304. $2.7 million death benefit. Beneficiary changed from Sandra Sinclair to Maya Sinclair, 100%, signed September 18th, 2025, effective immediately. He opened the third folder. Sinclair Medical Devices Restricted Stock Transfer Agreement. My father had owned 71% of the company. He had transferred 52% voting shares to me. My father retained 19% non-voting. Filed with the Georgia Secretary of State on September 25th, 2025. My name in legal print as majority shareholder. My mother owned 22% non-voting shares. Vanessa owned 8% non-voting. I now had majority voting control. I could appoint board members, remove officers, make operational decisions, approve budgets, fire executives, including my mother and sister. Grant handed me a sealed envelope. Your father asked me to give you this after you saw the documents. I opened it. 2 pages, handwritten it said, "Maya, I've been a coward for 34 years. Your mother trained me. That's what I tell myself. But the truth is, I let her. I chose peace over you. I chose her approval over your dignity. When you were 11, you found a photo album in my study. Pictures of my sister Joanna. She died in a car accident in 1984. She was 21. You look exactly like her. Same eyes, same smile, same spirit. Your mother couldn't look at you without seeing Joanna, without being reminded that I had loved someone before her, someone I lost. She resented that. So she erased you, and I let her. I told myself I was keeping the peace. I told myself you were strong enough to handle it. I told myself Vanessa needed more attention because she was fragile. I lied to myself for 34 years. I sent you money. $200 here, $500 there. Over the years, I sent you $31,000. It's not enough. It will never be enough. But it was all I could do without your mother auditing me. She controlled the accounts. She controlled everything except this. When I woke up the day after surgery, September 16th, and they told me you had given me your kidney, I broke. I realized I had spent 34 years choosing my wife over my daughter, choosing my comfort over your worth, choosing silence over truth. I can't undo 34 years, but I can give you the power I should have given you from the start. The shares give you control. Fire your mother if you need to. Protect the company I built or sell it and be free. I'll support whatever you choose. I just needed you to have the power I should have given you 34 years ago. I love you. I'm sorry. Dad, I was crying. Grant pushed a box of tissues across the table. He sat quietly while I finished reading. Finally, I looked up and asked what I'd do now. He said that was up to me, but that my father had told him, "Wait until they show you who they really are. Then act." I wiped my eyes and said they showed me on December 7th. Grant nodded and said then I knew what to do. Saturday, December 13th. My mother called Northwestern Life to update her mailing address. The agent said she was no longer the beneficiary on the policy. The change had been effective since September 18th. My mother's voice went sharp. She said that was impossible. The agent told her the new beneficiary was Maya M. Sinclair. Silence. My mother said there must be a mistake. The agent said no, ma'am, and offered to mail her a copy. My mother hung up and called my father immediately. She was screaming. He said calmly that it was done, that Maya was the donor and Maya got the policy. She said she would contest it. He said she couldn't because he was the policyholder and didn't need her permission. She hung up and immediately called her attorney. Monday, December 15th. Vanessa was preparing materials for an executive committee meeting. She was reviewing the updated board packet. She saw it. Shareholder registry updated September 25th, 2025. Richard Sinclair, 19% non-voting. Sandra Sinclair, 22% non-voting. Vanessa Sinclair Moore, 8% non-voting. Maya M. Sinclair, 52% voting. Vanessa read it 3 times. Then she grabbed the filing, drove to my parents' house, and burst into my father's study. What the hell is this? She doesn't know anything about the business. She works at a nonprofit making $37,000 a year. My father looked at her calmly. She's my daughter, and she saved my life. You threw a party for yourself. I raised $91,000. You raised your profile. Maya gave me her kidney. Vanessa's voice cracked. So you're punishing me for not being a genetic match? I'm rewarding her for being invisible for 34 years, while you took everything. That evening, Vanessa went home. My mother was there. They sat at Vanessa's dining table, surrounded by documents. My mother said the life insurance was his to control and she couldn't contest it without proving incompetence or coercion. And neither applied. Vanessa asked about the shares. My mother said not legally since he was the founder. Then Vanessa asked if that meant Maya just gets everything. My mother's voice went cold. Unless we make her fail. If she tries to run it and destroys it, the board can vote her out. She has 52%. But if she's incompetent, we can build a case. So we wait for her to screw up? No, we make sure she screws up. We undermine every decision, turn the staff against her, leak to industry press that the company's in chaos. From the doorway, Marcus spoke. He said, "You're planning to sabotage your own sister-in-law?" Vanessa turned. He said, "No, your dad chose the daughter who gave him a kidney over the daughter who took credit for it. There's a difference." He walked away. That was the first crack in Vanessa's marriage. December 16th, my mother called me. Her voice was ice. She said they needed to talk about my father's decisions. I asked what about them. She said I had manipulated a sick man into signing over his assets while he was medicated and vulnerable. I said I didn't manipulate anyone, and I didn't even know until after the dinner. She said it was a convenient story, that I donated a kidney, played the martyr, and cashed in. I told her I was hanging up. She said I thought I could run Sinclair Medical and that I would destroy it in 6 months. I said, we'd see. I hung up. December 19th. I went to Piedmont Hospital medical records. I requested a complete copy of my medical records from my living donor surgery through discharge. 4 days later, I picked up a thick manila envelope. I opened it on my kitchen table. Surgical notes, discharge summary, medication lists, post-op care instructions, and stapled in the middle, an ethics committee review dated August 22nd, 2025. I started reading. There was an incident report dated August 20th, 2025. Sandra Sinclair, Patient's mother had presented to Dr. Lisa Howe's office requesting a consultation. Mrs. Sinclair had stated, "Is there any way to delay this donation or find another donor? Maya isn't stable enough for this." When asked to clarify, Mrs. Sinclair stated, "Maya has emotional issues. I'm worried she's doing this for attention. She doesn't have the maturity for this kind of decision." Dr. Howe explained that the donor had passed all psychological evaluations. Mrs. Sinclair insisted they look closer at the donor's mental state. Per protocol, Dr. Howe documented this conversation and reported it to the Transplant Ethics Committee. The Ethics Committee meeting notes from August 22nd stated that the committee interviewed Maya Sinclair separately. Donor was fully informed, psychologically stable, and donating voluntarily. Mother's concerns appear to stem from controlling family dynamics rather than legitimate medical issues. Proceeding with donation as scheduled. Mother's attempt to interfere is noted in file. I sat there for a long time. My mother had tried to stop the donation. She went to the hospital social worker 10 days after I tested compatible. She tried to label me emotionally unstable. She wanted them to find a different donor. She tried to stop me from saving my father's life. The next morning, I called Dr. Howe. She confirmed everything. She said, in 15 years doing this work, she had seen families pressure donors to donate, but she had never seen a mother try to stop a daughter from saving her father's life. I asked if these records could be used in other contexts like corporate governance. She said they were my medical records, and I could use them however I needed to. They were time-stamped, signed, official hospital documentation. I thanked her. I had everything I needed. But I had one more idea, and this was the twist that would end everything. In the 2 weeks leading up to the board meeting, I reached out to 3 people quietly. Diane Foster, my father's 30-year assistant, who had mouthed "I'm sorry" to me at the dinner. Marcus, Vanessa's husband, who had told the truth at the dinner without being asked. And Julia, my cousin, who had always known something was wrong. I asked each of them the same question. Would they be willing to go on record about what they witnessed? All 3 said yes, without hesitation. December 23rd, 2025, 2 p.m., Sinclair Medical Devices, 5th floor conference room. Quarterly board meeting. 7 board members. My mother as CFO. Vanessa as VP of Operations. My father as Chairman Emeritus. Me as majority shareholder. Also present, Philip Chen, company attorney. Jessica Hall, HR director. 3 department heads. I arrived in a charcoal blazer and white blouse. The hospital bracelet from September was still on my wrist. I'd kept it. I wore it on purpose. My scar was visible above my collar. I carried a folder and a small laptop. I walked to the head of the table. My mother was already sitting in that chair. I didn't say anything. I just stood there. She moved. I sat down. My mother said I wasn't usually at these meetings. I said I was the majority shareholder now, and I thought I should start attending. Silence. Board members glanced at each other. Vanessa started to speak. I slid the corporate filing across the table. Filed September 25th with the Georgia Secretary of State. I held 52% voting shares. Douglas Park, one of the board members, looked at my father and asked if this was true. My father nodded. He said he had transferred shares to Maya in late September and that it was legal and final. I opened my laptop. I said, "Before we proceed with the agenda, I need to correct something in the October board minutes." I looked at my mother. I told the board that at the family recovery dinner on December 7th, my mother had toasted Vanessa for saving my father's life, and that 24 people raised their glasses to my sister while I sat at the far end of the table in a dress that showed my surgical scar. I slid documents across the table to Philip Chen. I donated my left kidney to my father on September 15th, 2025. I showed them the hospital discharge summary. The donor compatibility report. 97% match. Tested August 10th. The surgical record showing a living donor nephrectomy. I pulled my collar down slightly. The scar was fully visible. I said I lost 9 weeks of work. I have permanent medical monitoring for life. I have $11,530 in out-of-pocket costs. I have the scar. Board members stared. My mother's face was white. Vanessa was looking at the table. I said, I also have documentation that my mother attempted to prevent my donation. I slid Dr. Howe's incident report across the table and the ethics committee notes. I said that on August 20th, my mother went to the hospital's social worker and asked if there was any way to delay the donation or find another donor. She stated I wasn't stable enough, that I had emotional issues and was doing it for attention. The transplant ethics committee investigated and cleared me. My mother had tried to stop me from saving my father's life. Douglas Park was reading the documents. His face changed. Then I said, "There's one more thing." I opened my laptop. I pressed play. The room heard Marcus's voice from the December 7th dinner captured on his phone without anyone knowing. His clear, calm voice saying, I wanted to understand what Richard's recovery really involved. The living donor for Richard Sinclair was not listed as Vanessa. It was listed as Maya. And then, my father's voice? Yes. Maya donated her kidney to me on September 15th. She spent 9 weeks recovering alone, with no help, while the rest of us were elsewhere. I closed the laptop. Jessica Hall was taking notes. Her hand was shaking. Philip Chen looked at my mother and asked, Sandra, did you attempt to interfere with a medical procedure? My mother didn't answer. I let the silence sit. Then I stood. I said this brings me to why I'm here today. I'm exercising my authority as majority shareholder. Effective immediately, I am removing Sandra Sinclair from her position as Chief Financial Officer, pending investigation into financial management and ethics violations. My mother stood and said I couldn't do that. I said I could. 52% voting authority. Company bylaws. Article 7, Section 3. Majority shareholder can remove officers with or without cause. Philip, can you confirm? He looked at the bylaws and said that was correct. I turned to Vanessa. I told her she had 48 hours to choose between option 1, a new role as senior manager of special projects at $95,000 annual salary, or option 2, we discuss a severance arrangement. I requested a vote to approve these changes. Douglas Park moved to approve the removal of Sandra Sinclair as CFO and the restructuring of the executive team. Jessica Hall seconded. Philip asked all in favor. 5 hands went up. My father abstained. My mother's longtime ally abstained. Motion carried. I picked up my folder. I said, meeting adjourned. Sandra, please collect your personal items from your office by end of day. Vanessa, report to Jessica by Thursday with your decision. Everyone else, thank you for your time. I walked out. I didn't look back. Behind me, the room erupted. I heard my mother's voice, shrill, Richard, how could you let her? And my father's voice, firm for the first time in 34 years, I let her fix what I broke. The next week was chaos. My mother moved out of the family home on December 24th, Christmas Eve. She stayed with Vanessa. She hired an attorney to contest the share transfer. Her attorney reviewed the documents and called her on December 26th. He told her the documents were ironclad, witnessed, notarized, properly filed, and that she had no legal grounds to challenge them. He advised her not to contest. On December 27th, Marcus came home from work. A colleague had mentioned something to him, and even though he had already spoken at the dinner, he hadn't yet fully understood the scope of everything that had been hidden. He went home and found Vanessa in the kitchen and said, "Why did I find out from a colleague that Maya's salary was $37,000, that she had $11,000 in medical debt, and that no one helped her recover? You knew she was alone for 9 weeks, didn't you?" Vanessa's voice was small. She said it was complicated. Marcus said he stood at that dinner and clapped and looked like an idiot and a fool and he'd been manipulated by his own wife. He said, "That's not complicated." That's wrong. That was the beginning of the end of their marriage. On December 30th, Vanessa met with Jessica Hall and chose option 1. She accepted the demotion. She was staying. On New Year's Eve, December 31st, there was a knock on my apartment door at 11:14 p.m. I opened it. Vanessa was there, coat over pajamas, eyes red. She said she needed to talk. She collapsed on my couch. She was crying. She said our mother made her this way. She said our mother told her since she was 6 that she was the special one, that she had to be perfect, that I was Dad's mistake. She said she didn't know our mother tried to stop my donation. She swore she didn't know. She said when Marcus showed her the board meeting documentation and she read what our mother did, she threw up. She said her own mother tried to stop me from saving her father's life. I sat down, not next to her, across from her. She said the fundraiser was our mother's idea. September 17th, 2 days after my surgery. Our mother said they needed to control the narrative. She said if Maya gets credit for this, she'll use it against us. Vanessa told her she'd saved Dad. Our mother said Maya would hold it over their heads forever and that they needed a counter-narrative. So Vanessa threw a party. She took credit. She let me disappear. And when Marcus found out, he looked at her like she was a monster. She said her therapist, whom she started seeing after the board meeting, told her she'd been emotionally abused by their mother her entire life. That, being the golden child, is its own kind of prison. But she said that doesn't excuse what she did. It explains it, but it doesn't excuse it. I said I knew that. She said she was sorry. I told her I knew it didn't fix anything. I looked at her, my sister, for the first time in years. She was broken too, just differently. I told her she was still demoted and that I couldn't be her sister right now, maybe not ever, but that I heard her and I believed she was sorry, and that would have to be enough. She nodded. At the door she turned and asked me why I did it. Donated the kidney, after everything they did to me. I thought about it. I told her because he was my dad, and I loved him, even when he didn't protect me, even when he let her erase me. That love doesn't go away just because people hurt you. She whispered that I was better than her. I told her no, that I just made different choices. She left. I closed the door. I leaned against it, and for the first time since all of this started, I let myself cry. Not from pain, from relief, from grief, from exhaustion. My cat Mochi came and rubbed against my legs. I picked her up. I sat on the floor and I cried. On January 20th, 2026, I hired Patricia Rhodes as the external CEO of Sinclair Medical Devices. She was 54, former VP at Medline Industries, 27 years in medical supply, clean reputation, no ties to my family. The board approved unanimously. I transitioned to board chair. I kept my 52% shares. I took a salary of $98,000. I also kept my part-time job at Horizon Education Fund, 20 hours a week. I loved the work. I wasn't going to give that up. I used the company salary to pay off my medical debt, all $11,530. And I started building savings for the first time in my life. I also created something new, the Living Donor Support Fund. Sinclair Medical Devices would contribute $55,000 a year to help living donors with medical costs. The first recipient was a woman named Rachel, 29 years old, who had donated a kidney to her brother and lost her job during recovery. I handed her a check for $5,500. She asked if I did this. I told her someone should have done it for me. Now we do it for others. On February 14th, 2026, I met my father for dinner. Just the two of us, a small diner near the hospital where all of this had started. He asked if I was okay. I said I was getting there. I asked if he was okay. He said he was proud of me and that he should have said that more. I told him he should have said it 34 years ago. He nodded. He knew. We ate in silence for a moment. Then I said I didn't forgive him yet for all those years, but I was trying to understand. He said he didn't deserve forgiveness and that he just wanted to know I was going to be okay. I told him I was building something new. The company, the fund, my life. That I was not invisible anymore. He reached across the table and put his hand on mine. He said I was never invisible to him. He said he just didn't know how to make me visible to them without losing everything. I said he chose wrong, but he chose right in the end, and that was something. He told me then that he and my mother had signed a legal separation agreement the week before. The divorce would finalize after the required 1-year separation period. I asked how he felt. He said, free. Terrified, but free. I smiled slightly and told him good, that he should be. March 18th, 2026, 3 months after the board meeting, 4 months after the dinner, 6 months after the surgery. I still work at Horizon Education Fund part-time. I'm still board chair at Sinclair Medical Devices. The company is stable. Revenue is up 9%. Morale has improved. My mother lives in Savannah, Georgia now. We have minimal contact. The separation is ongoing. The divorce is pending. Vanessa works as a project manager at a different medical company in Atlanta. She makes $82,000 a year. She's in therapy twice a week and in marriage counseling with Marcus. I don't know if they'll make it. We haven't spoken in 3 months. My father is healthy. His kidney function is stable at 93%. He lives alone in a small apartment near the park where he used to take me when I was little. We have coffee every Sunday. I moved to a 1-bedroom apartment, $1,400 a month. I can afford it now. I have $14,000 in savings. My medical debt is paid off. The scar is still there, 6 inches, pink and raised. It aches sometimes when it's cold. I don't hide it anymore. Today I'm at my office at Horizon Education Fund. A young woman named Stephanie came in. She's 25. She needs help navigating the living donor process for her father. She wants to donate, but her family doesn't think she should. Her sister is the responsible one. They want her sister to do it even though Stephanie is a better match. I see myself in her face. I roll up my sleeve. I show her my scar. I tell her the surgery is the easy part. It's what comes after, making sure people see your sacrifice. That's the battle. She deserves to be seen. I tell her not to let anyone take that from her. Her eyes fill with tears. She asks, what if they don't see her? What if she does this and they still choose her sister? I tell her then she'll know. And she'll have the power to choose herself. That's what the scar teaches you. You survived. You can survive anything. She nods. She thanks me. She leaves. I sit there for a moment. I feel something shift inside. Not revenge. Not bitterness. Purpose. I'm turning my pain into protection for others. That's healing. At the end of the day, I walk to my car. It's a March evening, 6:30. The air is cold, and I can see my breath. My phone buzzes. A text from my father, coffee Sunday? I type back. Always. Another text from Diane, my father's assistant, board meeting materials ready for Monday. Patricia is doing great. I respond, thanks, Diane. I stop at my car. I look at my reflection in the window. I see the scar. I see myself. Not invisible. Not erased. Not the golden child. Just Maya. Survivor, protector, free. I get in the car. I drive away. The scar will always be there. But so will I.